I'm Tandy Culpepper. In this episode of The Hollywood Beat, she's the author of the riveting memoir, Slow Dancing with the Devil. It's the tragic story of a mother losing a son to an accidental overdose. Here's my interview with Susan Bartz Herrick. Hello, Susan. Thanks for talking to me again.
Hi, Tandy, and thank you for having me on. Appreciate it very much.
Now, you're a delight to speak with.
Thank you.
Getting down to brass tacks, when did you lose Luke and how old was he?
I lost Luke August 28th, 2021. He was 30 years old.
How did you find out about his death?
Um, I didn't hear from him for 2 days, and he and I were in constant contact. I was the kind of like the quintessential helicopter mom, and he did he didn't mind it because he knew that I needed to know he was okay. And no text came, tried to call, and last I heard from him really was Friday late afternoon, and Sunday morning just had a bad feeling. And I'm in North Carolina, so I couldn't run over to where he was because he was living in Los Angeles. And I called a couple of his friends. They said that there's a code to get in, so I had to call the police, and they did a
So
welfare
that was a
check.
wellness check.
Yeah, yeah. And they called me back an hour later, and they said the words no parent ever wants to hear. I'm sorry, ma'am, but your son is deceased.
That
So,
must have been a real gut punch.
mm, don't remember much after that for a while, Tandy. Yeah, it
Wow.
just kind of fell to the floor, fell to the floor.
Well,
Yeah.
I don't have children, so I can't really understand in great detail the feelings that you must have gone through, but I can surely empathize with you.
Thank you. Thank you.
You said in a conversation we had that Luke's first experience with opioids was when he was 14.
Correct. Yes. He was only 14. He had a pilonidal cyst, which is a cyst on his tailbone, and had surgery. And they gave him oxycontin. About
Does that seem normal to you to give somebody Oxycontin for something like that?
Well, back in those days, yes, because you have to understand the timeline of all of this. This was in the mid 2000, I think it was 2005, 2006. And these are the years where they were passing it out like Pez because the information that they got on this brand new miracle drug was that it could take all pain away and that it was only 1% addictive, which of course was a lie. But doctors learn about medications from their pharmaceutical reps, and how Purdue got it through the FDA was through some graphs and charts that were really skewed. So how they had it set up and gradually getting smaller, it actually looked at first glance that it was only 1% addictive, and that's how they pushed it through.
I've been at doctors' waiting rooms before and see
Mhm.
these people come in dragging on wheels these big briefcase things, and they're
Yeah.
pharmaceutical reps, and they have all these samples. And I
Oh,
know going to a doctor's office when they'll write a prescription for something and they'll say, I have some samples, let me give them to you. It seems to me like as if over the years there has not been the kind of attention that needs to be made to the ease with which these drugs are disseminated. And has that
yeah.
changed or is it?
Um, the pharmaceutical companies, they throw these lavish parties, and I have been to them, where they invite doctors and they'll fly them out to Hawaii or to Puerto Rico and put them up in beautiful hotels and then give talks, lectures about the drugs. But along with that is the champagne and the caviar. And, it's pharmaceutical companies have monetary gain. And if their drug gets passed by the FDA, they say they just want to help people. And of course, I'm sure a lot do. But in this case with oxycodone, it was such a lie. Case in point, Tandy, they launched it in the mid 1990s. I think it was around 1996. And at that point, on record, there were 4,000 overdose deaths at that time. And that was primarily from heroin. A lot of men and women that came back from Vietnam got hooked on it. And, the stereotype then was, the junkie. Well, let's fast forward that now to 2024, 23's statistics. Just last year alone, there were over 110,000 unintentional overdoses. And the count now stands at over 1 million people who have lost their lives to this unintentional overdose. What Purdue did is they opened up Pandora's box. And when they finally pulled in and restricted this medication and then started cracking down on the doctors for passing it out, then people who already had that dependency poured it over to heroin. And there was a big influx there. And then fentanyl started to become produced. China ships over 4 precursor drugs to Mexico, and Mexico cooks it up and they put it in now just about every drug imaginable. And the DEA states now that with counterfeit pills, 7 out of 10 contain fentanyl in them. They have stamps that look just like Adderall, that look just like Klonopin, Percocet, even Tylenol. And it is a deadly, deadly game out there. We have over 300 people a day who are losing their lives to fentanyl poisoning, which is now the
Are these
new
drugs
term.
from Mexico coming in legally or
No,
illegally?
illegally,
Well,
illegally.
how can they be interdicted? I mean, the the cartels managed to get cocaine here,
Mhm.
but and even in that regard, they do interdict some cocaine dealers. It would seem to me that it would be easier to interdict these illegal drugs, but I'm a neophyte, so I don't know. What's your take?
Um, I'm not really sure. I look on the news and I see that they confiscate just mass amounts of these pills. I was told, Luke told me once that they'll check maybe 1 out of 10 cars, 1 out of 20 cars that just come in Southern California alone and smuggle it in that way. And you have to understand too, Tandy, that they put it in prescription bottles that look like the real drug, that um, look like Percocet. So there's both sides, the illegal and different color pills. The stamps look identical, so it's very very hard to stop, from what I'm told. I mean,
These
Luke took a counterfeit pill. He had asked for a Klonopin. My son was what you call dual diagnosis, which means he had some mental health issues along with substance use disorder. And I like using that term, substance use disorder, instead of addiction, and certainly not, addict, because
there's a
addict means the
stigma.
person. Yes,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
it's the disease that's ugly, not the person.
There is an image that you get when you hear the word addict. It's like the surgical tubing tied around the arm, the needle, the spoon with the um, lighter underneath it, where you're cooking whatever you're going to put the syringe in, and it's stereotypical.
Yeah.
So, who came up with SUD?
It is a medical term, and after Luke passed away, I just wanted to find some answers as to what was really going on out there. And I was really surprised, Tandy, because there is a lot of medical literature, um, scientific data done about substance use disorder. It was the association, the medical association, SAMA, in 2006 put out the statement that it was indeed a disease that changed the brain, changed the wiring of the brain. And I started researching and found all this info, but it's written in medicalese. Not a lot of people can read that. And I thought, why don't people know what's really going on? And I wrote this book, Slow Dancing with the Devil. Yes, it is a memoir about Luke, but it's also really packed with scientific data, and I break it down in a very understandable form.
You
Many,
certainly do, and it is exhaustively researched. I mean, the footnotes that go through there are uh, myriad.
well, I knew I had to cite everything because even though I am an academic, a professor, I'm writing outside of my field of expertise. So and also I wanted people to be able to, if they had a question or wanted to argue, to be able to go to the source and find out exactly where that came from, that this isn't just one grieving mother trying to justify things. I mean,
So you could be a
case
reliable narrator.
Oh, yes. I mean, I did not know that there were 13 precursors to addiction. And when I went through that paper, I started counting, and Luke had about 2/3 of them. ADD is one. Of course, there's trauma, PTSD, uh, Tourette's, which Luke had. He was OCD. He also had general anxiety disorder. And that's really what brought him down. He was not on narcotics at the time of his passing, but he was on Klonopin, and he ran out of it, went to the clinic. There was a 3-hour wait. He was freaking out, so he asked a friend for a Klonopin, but that's not what he got. Yeah.
When I was young in my college years, I took something called the MMPI. I think it's Minnesota Multiphasic. Well, I've screwed it up now. I had it in my mind earlier. But the psychiatrist who read the results said that I had an addictive personality. So for years, I would not have uh, a glass of wine, a beer, anything when I was at home by myself. I didn't want to turn into for want of a better word, a lush. I would only drink at parties or if I were with a friend at a restaurant or whatever, social drinking. It is so easy because I have had friends whom I dearly loved who were obnoxious as hell because it was like one drink is fine, two drinks is great, and then you can't stop for some
Right.
people.
Right. 2 out of
And
10.
yeah,
2 out of
and
10.
we hear about AA
Mm-hmm.
for people like Luke. Was AA available or was there something else?
AA really, the program that Luke was in was AA based, and it really helped turn him around. Uh, he spent 1 year at a sobriety house in Los Angeles. First off, you've got to get off of the drugs. But what a lot of people don't realize, Tandy, is that it takes the brain for narcotics, um, sometimes up to a year, if not more, for those receptors to heal.
Wow, I
Because
did
when you
not know
take,
that.
yeah, when you take the drugs, um, it releases this blast of dopamine. And how Luke really got hooked early on. His father and I had gone through a terrible divorce. He was depressed. We lost the house, lost a lot of things. And all of a sudden, because I asked him, I said, when did Oxycontin get on your radar? And he said, Mom, when that nurse gave me that little white pill, all the bad stuff went away and I felt good for the first time. So, but from a bioneurological standpoint, what happens is the drugs start giving the brain the dopamine. So the brain stops making it. It doesn't have to, it's there. Unfortunately, tolerance sets in. So the next time you take it, the high is not as high. That feel good is not as good. And then when it wears off, instead of just hitting a baseline, it dips below. So you feel worse than what you started off. If you feel worse, what are you going to do? I want to feel good again. So you take more and that cycle starts going. But eventually people are taking the drugs just to feel normal so they don't have to feel that terrible withdrawal pain. And that withdrawal pain is excruciatingly painful. Um, can I share a story Luke told me?
Please.
We have a little Finger Lake out in the back. And with all of Luke's surgeries, and every time he got put on, he'd have to come back off. So he always had to go through this detox. And it was so painful for me as Luke's mother to watch this, especially because we could not get our hands on Suboxone at that time. And I asked him,
Wait, what is Suboxone?
um, Suboxone is one of the few medications that is available. It is a narcotic, but it's got a lid on it.
Which
So,
means
which means it won't let you get high, but it blocks the cravings. And for years, it was disparaged by the AANA community because the old stance was that you have to be totally clean, not taking any drugs whatsoever in order to claim that you're sober, in order to be in our meetings, in order to be accepted. But there are some people whose brains need a little extra help. I mean, you would not ever tell a cancer patient, no, you can't take that chemo. You have to pray away your cancer. And a diabetic, no, you can't take the insulin. there are some people who need that in order to survive. A very good friend of mine who wrote the afterword in my book, his name is Dr. Aaron Gupta. He treats people with SUD. He claims that he has 80 to 85% of his patients living full, healthy, normal lives, and he regulates their Suboxone. When things are going really good, he tapers it down, tapers it down, tapers it down. Some even get off totally, but if they have a trigger, they have a place to go, and he can up the level, which will keep everything in control. Again, much like a diabetic with insulin. Um,
Great.
so yeah,
But let's get back to your story since you've
okay.
defined Suboxone.
um, we were standing out in the backyard by a lake, and I asked Luke, um, what are cravings like, and what is withdrawal? What does it really feel like? And I said, Mom, people think that cravings are like, I want a cookie, I want potato chips, I want Mexican food. And he said, it is so devastating because your brain thinks it's going to die unless it gets that drug. And he said, as far as withdrawal goes, he said, imagine somebody pours a gallon of gas on you and then lights you up. He said, you just burst out in flames everywhere. Every part of you is on fire, from your toenails, your eyeballs, inside, outside. It is excruciatingly painful. And he said, when that happens, you have one of two choices. One is to go jump in the lake and put it out. And of course, that means going back to the drug that took away that pain. And he said, your other choice is to sit there for 5, 7, even 10 days and let it burn itself out. And the sad thing is, he said, once you get out of the lake, if that's what you choose to do, you've got fumes going off you all the time. So people can walk by you, trigger events, heartbreaks, other traumas, just bad days, and you'll feel it flare. And he said, even when you walk off of it, it's with you forever. It is a chronic disease, meaning there is no cure. You just have to live with it and do your best never to come across another substance again. Unfortunately, in Luke's case, he would get off, but because of the car accident that he was in, he had multiple surgeries which followed and some emergency events. And so he had to be put back on the drugs. And the tragedy, Tandy, was that the medical community did not know how to walk him off. They were not trained in it. They had nobody there who was qualified to give Suboxone, because you had to take at that time a class, 8-hour class, and get what was called an X waiver. Doctors didn't want to do it because, well, it's for the addicts. I don't want to take my time for it. But people with SUD do have to have surgeries. And there was no way that they knew or really cared on how to walk him off, save one very wonderful doctor from Duke outpatient pain clinic. And he really worked with us and made up his own plan on how to get Luke off. But in and out, in and out. It was hard to watch, especially since they didn't care.
You referred to Luke's accident. I was going to ask you about that. He was going from North Carolina to see his grandmother.
Yes, Grandpa died in January of 2010. And, to back that up just a little bit more, Luke had been given narcotics 4 times before he was 18, the pilonidal cyst, sprained thumb, thumb surgery, and to get his wisdom teeth out. We scrounged around and found a doctor. There were only 3 in the state who could give him Suboxone. And the guy walked him off. Luke was doing great. In 2010, as I said, Grandpa died in January. In February, Luke decided to go down and to take care of my mother, his grandma, for a while. And an hour out, he was in a near fatal car accident. The car rolled. He was thrown out, the car on top of him. They did not expect him to live. He had 27 broken bones, internal injuries, a burst T fracture, and he was on life support for a week. When we finally had our prayers answered and we're told we don't know how he's surviving this, but he is, I looked over to the side of the bed and I saw morphine, just all these drugs, and I knew that we were in trouble and we were going to have to fight the devil one more time.
Right, right.
Yeah.
The extent of his accidents, at a later time, he had to go back in for another surgery, did he not?
Yes, he had in 2005, he was complaining of back pain all the time. And, I thought, is he drug seeking? Uh, because they kept on taking x-rays of the T4, and it didn't show anything out of place. And I told him, go get just a CAT scan of your whole back. He did, and they found out that a medical device that they had implanted slipped, and it had prongs on it, and it was poking in his aorta, his intestines, and the only way was to have another full surgery. I mean, 19-inch scar straight down his front. They had to move the organs out of the way and cut that thing out literally in 100 pieces. Well, the amount of narcotics that it took for him to go back on that, and he already had a high tolerance. I mean, we had 4 of Duke's top anesthesiologists come into our room and ask him, they said, Mr. Paschal, we have never seen anyone on this amount of morphine. What you're taking now is enough to put down an elephant. And here you are talking to us, having a rational conversation. We see you're in pain. We know you're not drug seeking. We're just trying to figure out how are we going to walk you off of this so we can send you home, because it is not going to be easy. And it wasn't. It wasn't. He like I said, the doctor made up a plan, walked him down on methadone, but still Luke chose to go into a treatment center for 30 days just to protect himself from the world so he could be in a safe place to get off. He ended up leading some of the groups there. And only 3 weeks after he got out of the treatment center, he had an intestinal blockage and they had to shoot him up with morphine again. I called the insurance company. I said, look, I need to get him back in the treatment center for a detox and just some time just so he can get settled. And they point blank told me, no, he only gets 1 a year. And I said, he didn't go out and plan to party. Okay. This wasn't party. He went in and had to have an NG tube in his nose for a week, and he couldn't eat and drink. And obviously it's very painful. And they had to put him on morphine. So I'm sure you could make an exception. No, it was hard, fast, only 1 treatment a year. Do
They
you think
are
that they would do that if somebody had a heart attack?
they are a business,
Oh, yeah.
and the part of their business model is to make as much money as possible and to pay out as few benefits as possible, which is criminal. I mean, when you think
Yeah,
about it,
you you wouldn't give a cancer patient one round of chemo just because that's all the insurance. You give it according to how much that person needs. And yet, with substance use disorder, they'll give you what's called the 30, 60, 90. You get 30 days inpatient and then partial outpatient, which means you come in during the day, but at night you're on your own. And 90 days is you just go to meetings. You need up to a year with some of these narcotics to be in a safe environment to let that brain heal. And insurance, no, they don't. They do not cover sobriety houses, which I think is a shame because I think sobriety houses are probably one of the best ways in order for somebody to get their life back, to work out some internal issues they might have, because a lot of people who get addicted do some things they normally wouldn't do, things that cause a lot of shame, things that put them in prison, or get in trouble with the law, and that shame starts building up. People start caving in, and it just becomes the only world that they know.
that strikes me as as good a reason to go to have politicians get with program and instate Medicare for all. I wonder if Medicare would have been so blasé with treatment of Luke. I have no idea because I've not been on that sort of thing, but I have had my own medical problems and
Mhm.
enormous, enormous hospital bills are paid for or either forgiven because of the government's agreement with the provider. How
Um,
much did Luke's medical bills come to when he was hospitalized from the
uh,
accident?
oh, that was a surprise. $364,000. Opened up the bill. I just stared at it and I started laughing. It was like, oh, right, right. You know, that's a house for you. Yeah. And
Yeah.
that was just one of the hospital bills. I was very fortunate, Tandy, I will tell you, um, that the Affordable Health Care Act had just been passed because, uh, which covered Luke under my Blue Cross Blue Shield 70% until he was 26. Because if that had not been passed, he was 19 when this happened, you know. But at the end, those last 4 years, he was in recovery almost for 4 years, and then we found out that he had 8 screws in his back and 2 rods, and one of the rods in his back uh, what had moved and the screw was impinging upon his spinal cord. So he was going to have yet one more surgery. And the insurance he was a CalMed, um, I think, and they started him back.
Medi-Cal? Do you mean Medi-Cal?
Medi-Cal,
Yeah.
that's it, Medi-Cal, and they started him back on some of the medications, and he said, I need to get off, but all of the uh, centers that his insurance covered were either the indigent psychiatric, um, or where they sent people in prison. And he said, I just don't feel safe. And that's why he said, Mom, can I come home? Can I detox at home? Would you take care of me? My addictionologist will give me all of the drugs I need to walk off of it. He said, I just there's no real safe, good place out here that I can detox, and I need a good 2 weeks just, to feel safe again. So,
You've raised a point that I was going to address in a question. What is an addictionologist?
just like a cardiologist, okay, they study the bio-neurological um, interactions with drugs and the brain. It is a relatively new, and I would say relatively new, I'm talking 20, 30 years, um, specialty. But unfortunately, in like the 180 uh, medical facilities that train, only about, I think, 15 offer residencies or training in addiction, where you take the full rotation, just like you would in any other specialty. What medical schools mostly do is they have maybe an hour or two class, and it's usually just on narcotics and how not to prescribe and how not to get people addicted. But it is not on the process of SUD, talking about those 13 precursors, understanding how to walk somebody off. I went to a pain clinic for my knee not too long ago, and I was chatting with the doctor and asked her when she got the X waiver, what year, and she looked away. Really? You're a physician in a pain clinic and you never bothered to get the X waiver? What do you give your patients? And now Dr. Gupta was telling me that he is involved in a study at the University of Michigan using Suboxone as a painkiller unto itself, because I'm not saying, it can't be abused. Anything can be abused. You go out, get too much sunshine, you're going to get burned. But prescribed the right way, it's a very good, useful drug for people who have substance use disorder that is tied with narcotics.
I want to talk about Purdue Pharma and the Sackler family. I read on, okay, I know it's not the best source in the world, Wikipedia, that between 1990 and sometime in the 2000s, there
Mhm.
were 816,000 deaths to overdose, and 500,000 of those were from oxycontin. And who made oxycontin?
Purdue Pharma.
Hmm.
Purdue Pharma. Yeah.
And who
Oh,
threw all
they
those
were raking
lavish
in
parties?
billions.
Yeah.
They raked in billions, and then they had the gall to file for bankruptcy. And I think it's in the Supreme Court right now to decide if parents like me can sue them personally, because part of their deal was that they would give billions of dollars to go to the state, to go to programs, but people who were directly affected, they could not sue them. That's being argued now. So,
Susan, hold on.
mhm.
My plug on my computer has come out somehow. I hate this. I'm going to have to do an edit now.
That's all right.
Hmm. I wondered why all of a sudden your screen got dark.
Oh,
Okay, we were talking about Purdue Pharma. Let me see where I
yeah.
can go to pick up. You were the last person to talk, so I should talk now.
Okay.
Hold on. Hold on. I'd have thought. I also read that there was a $3 billion payout from Purdue Pharma or the Sacklers, and that there was an enormous amount of attention in congressional hearings about them.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes, yes. I don't know the exact amount, Tandy. They're taking chunks of it and giving it to states, and different states in their communities are splitting it all up between the counties, and then they can decide how they want to spend that money. So, it is for help, for prevention, for education, and that is very needed. What I wish they would do with a lot of the money from the Sacklers is to invest it into research and development. Um, I read an article CNN reported in 2017 that of all the millions or billions of doctors that are going out to, as they said, clean up the mess, 1% of that is going into research and development. Um,
But
some
that's
of the stat,
always the case.
yeah, but if you suffer from heart disease, you have about 50 medications that you can choose from. If you have diabetes, there's about 30. If you have cancer, there's over 100 chemos. Substance use disorder has about three or four, and one is just to save a life after a person has overdosed, not to help a person manage their disease. And that is something that really needs to be looked into. But, stigma, most people honestly think that people are just going out getting high, and unfortunately, they're dying. I mean, if you looked at my son, you would never in a million years guess that he had substance use disorder. I mean,
He was a movie star, handsome, looked
he was
like
movie star
the
handsome,
all-American boy.
charismatic, smart as a whip, had an IQ of over 140. He got into an Ivy League school on a special program, started his own CBD oil company. He just, um, substance use disorder is the price we say is the price we paid for his life. And we had such little help from outside sources to help us manage it. I mean, I was fearless taking on some of these doctors. I mean, you talk about a helicopter mom. She had, the machine guns on the side going too, but it was the only way to get people's attention. And still, I got accused of being my son's drug dealer, and to watch it that I don't kill him, and that was by an MD, and what do? You write a book, you get information out there,
When did you decide to
fight for the
write the
cause.
book?
Yeah, you fight the cause. Excuse me.
When did you decide to write the book?
Mm. Well, it was interesting. Of course, I was devastated, and Luke's best friend, his name is Jacob Taylor. He is a Hollywood actor and Hollywood handsome. He was just devastated, and he got up to me right away and said, "Susan, I want to make a film out of this." And I had always wanted to write Luke's story, but um, I had so much fun just having him around, and when he passed, I knew I had to do something. So for Jacob, I started writing down all the events and everything that happened. And all of a sudden I realized, I've got a book here. And I'm, it was cathartic at first, just all of the grief just came pouring out. And the memories, of course, were also fresh. I would just get up every day and write, Tandy. That's all I would do. And I did that for about a year and a half. And I had a very, very close friend who just happened to be my college roommate. And she's a published author. And I, in tears, said, "Chris, could you take a look at this and maybe help me clean it up a bit?" And she jumped right in and really helped me take it from uh, a cathartic outpouring into a well-edited book. So I
Chris and
really,
I both graduated from Goucher College's MFA program in creative nonfiction. So it
that's
just
what she
happens to be
told me.
serendipitous that you and I
Right.
have met each other.
Oh, I don't believe in coincidence, Tandy. So many things have fallen in place with this. So
Well,
many,
I interviewed a volcanologist, an expert on earthquakes and volcanoes, a geologist recently, and I was looking at her bio, and she had an MFA from Goucher, and I was like, "What are the odds?"
that's
So,
right.
yeah, as you say, um,
Mhm.
could I get you to read some from the book,
Yeah, I have the preface if you'd like.
please?
Okay. Well, the day I became we'll have a cut there.
Yeah, I'll cut it.
Okay. Why am I stuttering on that? Give me a sec.
Well, it's emotional.
Yeah, it is. It is.
You are reliving it. So take your time, take a deep breath, and you know,
The day I became my son's drug dealer, we both died in a way. It is said that a mother would give her own life for her child. I would for Luke, a million times over. And I wondered how many mothers would do the same to ensure their child would not die of a drug overdose or a rushed, unsupervised withdrawal. Yet that is precisely the situation my son and I faced. He depended on me. His life was in the balance. Saving him was all that mattered, and I was willing to risk it all. Little did I know in 1991 that my son was born with numerous precursors to addiction. And as the years went on, I was blind to the fact that I enabled his drug dependency. How could I know? Oxycontin was the wonder drug designed by Purdue Pharma to alleviate humankind's pain. Doctors passed it out like Pez, telling people it was only 1% addictive. That was a lie. When the devastating devil drug took over my son's life after a near fatal car accident, we were denied by law a legal drug called Suboxone that could ease his suffering and be a life-saving tool for recovery. Stigma and public policies forged in 1935 forced us to commit a felony by seeking it on the streets, as few medical doctors took the time to get the needed X waiver to prescribe it. Gone are the days when a single physician could provide all the needed medications for a patient. The unholy trinity now runs the legal drug cartel in America: insurance companies, the DEA, and non-scientific public policies. Physicians lost control and unknowingly led their trusting sheep to the slaughter. Hippocrates would be rolling over in his grave. Society's understanding of substance use disorder, also known as addiction, is just as much to blame. Stigma rules over science, calling SUD a moral deficiency instead of the chronic disease it really is. And the cultural image regarding an accidental overdose is that of a strung out, undisciplined party animal. No one expects it to be an Ivy League student with a documented high tolerance who could not find reliable medical treatment and was forced to go to the streets to find relief from unrelenting cravings. And yet, that is what happened.
I can see you have a theater background, do you know it?
Yeah, I do.
I can see that in your reading because it comes across like the most professional delivery that would make an amazing audiobook. I could listen to that story as told by you and feel as if the hard to grasp material that you footnoted would be something that I would be able to understand just by the way that you read it. So, you also have had interest from Hollywood. Tell me about
Yes.
that.
Well, Jacob took all of the notes and the book in a very raw form and pitched it out to some people he knew. And before he knew it, Justin Ross from the Bohemia Group and Tom Ferran, who writes for Yellowstone, um, decided that they would turn it into a screenplay. And they started on it. Of course, then we had the writer's strike, so everything had to go on hold. But when that was over, they dug back in, and the screenplay is now done. They're just pitching it out. They want to find the right director, and I tell you, Tandy, I feel this way too. We want people who have skin in the game to be on this project, just to make it all that much more personal. And I know, Hollywood everywhere is filled with it. We're losing 300 people a day. That is the equivalent of a 737 going down every single day. And of course, you'd think the media would pick up on that. No, but I know that people are out there and that um, this story will find its right home.
Is there anything before we close, as a mother, that you would like to share with our listeners and viewers that they may not be aware of?
Yes, I was in denial, Tandy, for a long time. Not my son, not my child. Nothing like this could happen in our family, even though when I had the evidence right in front of me. And one day I just realized that I had to overlook my ego and take a look at what was really going on if my child had a chance. And I do want to, and my enabling, if you suspect at all that your kids are into drugs, you've got to do something. You got to do it now. Children age 14 to 18 uh, are dying like weekly, 22 a week from unintentional overdoses because they go out to a party and somebody says, oh, here, try this. It's just an Adderall, or try this. It'll just make you feel really cool. Like I said, 7 out of 10 uh, counterfeit pills have fentanyl in them. So that is one. I want to challenge the medical community to treat all of their patients, not have a not not have a bias against a certain group. I mean, their Hippocratic oath is to all patients that they do start understanding what substance use disorder really is about. And just really to tell everybody to end the stigma. I want them to shift their attitudes and understand that substance use disorder is a disease and not a moral failing, and to give hope to those who do struggle. There is help. You have to search for it. You have to look for it. But everybody does not have to have the same ending that I have. And again, that's why I wrote this book as somewhat of a roadmap that
The
people
book
can
is called
understand.
Slow
So it will
Dancing with
help
the
others.
Devil. Slow
Yes.
Dancing with the Devil. It's out now. It's in bookstores. And if you don't want to go to a bookstore, it's available on Amazon.com. You're on a
Mhm.
book tour starting
Yes.
with?
Yeah. I'll be out in Los Angeles April 4th at the Barnes and Noble at the Grove, and it's at 7 o'clock at night. And then I have a couple book signings here in Fayetteville, and they're in the process of scheduling others. So we're on the road now. The book just got released in February. So, this is only March. So
Thank you so much,
off and running.
Susan. I really
Thank you.
appreciate it.
Thank you very much.